Welcome, everyone. Namaste from San Diego. We welcome everybody to our San Diego Vedanta Center, where we are going to have a talk by Dr. Sthaneshwar Timalsina, who is from the Stony Brook University. He was formerly here in San Diego for many, many years, teaching at San Diego State University, and now he's in New York. But we consider him part of our San Diego family. And so we welcome him for his expertise and his wisdom. He's a professor who's very astute in both Kashmir Shaivism, Buddhist philosophy, Vedanta philosophy, and many others. So it's just a privilege to have him and hear his wisdom. So let us begin. Dr. Timalsina, would you like to begin with the chant? Let me pin you for one moment. Let me just get you here. All right, I think you're good.
Swamiji, are you recording? Maybe
Yes.
you want.
Yeah. Well, let me just double check. Give me 1 second. 1 second. Should be recorded. Oh, it is being recorded. Yes. Yes.
Tatvari Shringa Trayo Asya Pada Dve Shirshe Saptahastaso Vrishabho Roraviti Moho Devo Martya Avivesha. This big bull, Mahadevo, Vrishabha, bull, with 4 horns and 3 legs, 2 heads, 7 hands, is roaring and has entered the earth. This is a mantra from the Rig Veda. Sometimes when we try to translate the mantras, they mean nothing. I don't think there is any bull as such having 4 horns, 3 legs, 7 hands, 2 heads. I have chosen the topic on mantra today, and I have been reflecting on, like a good Buddhist, on momentariness, and a good Vedantin, what is constant in life, and some fleeting moments that we like to retain as beautiful in life. And the part is Vedanta, Vedanta society. That has been one of the constants in my life and my San Diego family. So far, at least, they haven't forgotten me. which, which in this type of life we are living means really a lot, particularly not obsessed with this passion. Someone so much into Tantra and teaching passion, sometimes even annoying the Buddhists to the extent of teaching passion, that I look forward to our relation, continuity, and for all these nexus. And it boils down to mantra. What is mantra? Mantra is that nexus, sambandha, the rope that connects the cord. Ancient people thought that the heaven and the earth are tied together with a cord. The Vedic sages thought that speech is that chord. The mantra is that chord. And they said, Vag eva vishwa bhuvanani jagye, with speech manifest the world. Vachi vishwam pratishthitam, that within speech relies the entire world. Vagartha viva sampriktau, vagartha pratipattaye, jagatah pitarau vande, Parvati Parameshwarau. Kalidasa also says that Shiva and Shakti are tied together like speech and reference, and he is invoking them for perfection on speech and meaning. This primacy of speech is very unique. It is not that only humans have the speech. Speech is the universal phenomenon, but humans have glorified this speech to the zenith, making it primordial. That our manifest reality is actually a transformation of speech. But speech is abstract. Speech is merely resonance, and the world is tangible. And people, when make these objections, now we have gone even from physical observations that the tangible world collapses into the waves and the field, and ultimately space and time merges. And what remains there is something where the subject and object dichotomy collapses. And that non dual state of something, the being, for the sake of being, because it would not be non being. That's why we are calling it being, not because it was itself. And that we today are giving many scientific names. The rishis in the ancient time only called Vach or Nada, the speech and the resonance. When considered Vach, we went to reference Artha, meaning. When Nada, we went beyond this speech reference dichotomy. This is the singularity of the resonance in which the duality of reference and referring word collapses. It is not just in the Hindu culture that the speech has gained such a primacy. Swamiji just reminded this is the Easter weekend, and some of you may be celebrating Easter. And if you read the Bible, you will find again the primacy of speech in John. In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. If you read Kabbalah interpretation, you will see God said, let there be light, and there was light. This, the speech of God, is not telling somebody, hey, turn on the light. It is the speech that God becomes the speech, and that speech becomes the light. And then from light comes everything on. We actually come much closer to this subtle sphere of reality if we were to read in depth different literature from world cultures. So, from the Hindu perspective, I would be speaking the centrality of the mantra, and for that, we have to go all the way back to the Vedic times and how the speech is recognized. In general language, we have sentences. They give us command, they give us instructions, they describe a reality, they prohibit, like our stop signs. When you say stop, they prohibit, and they sometimes glorify, exaggerate things. And even in the command and instruction sentences, we have sometimes simple description of what you are ought to do. This is the key for the car. The person hands you over the key. You could take it a suggestion. He's letting you drive his car, but he hasn't told you directly. But then comes the command, hey, today you are driving. And there is the authority. Do you have a driver's license? Only the subject with driver's license is authorized. There is the authority. And application. You are supposed to turn on the wheel and put the brakes here and there. How to apply. Vedic language and general language are not different as far as application goes. Because language in general functions the same way. But what is unique to the Vedic language is the mantras. The same sentences can be used in description. The same sentence can be used in application as a mantra. So when you are using the same sentences in application as mantras, then we as if suspend the whole word and reference relationship. The only reason why the mantras have the meaning is because they are associated with meaningful tasks. We have assigned particular value to it. People ask me, what is the meaning of the seed syllable I'm? And I tell them, oh, this is a triangle, by the way. And what is the triangle? This is the genesis of speech. And what is that? Oh, this is the Agni center, the fire center in your Muladhara chakra. And what is that? Oh, this is the center where you start internal libation. And what is that? None of these is ever going to satisfy a subject who is trying to decipher the mantra in the exact same way that there is a word iPhone and this is a reference called iPhone. There is a word called cup and this is the object called cup with amazing tea. So this is not how mantra language works. There are different laws. And so this is where a new system of thought is required to understand mantras. And this is why no matter how much we continue having conversation upon mantra, we will not be able to fathom the depth of the Vedic and yet another domain, the Tantric. domain of mantras. But what is common to both and tantric domains, there sits this rock, this big milestone rock called Bhartrihari, a philosopher of language who came slightly before the compositions of the tantric agamas and after the Vedic revelations of the Brahmana texts. In this conjunction, he gives this philosophy of speech. The first sentence I would repeat that I have repeated almost in every conversation. Anadi nidhanam brahma shabda tattvam yad aksharam vivartatertha bhavena prakriya jagato yataha. Brahma, the absolute, has neither the beginning nor the end, and that is the Shabda Tattva, that is as it is in the form of speech. That in reality is speech itself. The beginningless and endless absolute reality is the speech. And that does not decay or that manifests in the form of the phonemes, and that transforms into the recognized reality, the external objects, and by means of which, by means of speech itself, the world functions. The world comes into motion. So the coming into motion, coming into dynamism, number one. The emanation of externality, number two. And the expression of the phonemes into the speech, number three. These three keys are central to understanding the philosophy of the mantras. Let me boil down a little bit. Sometimes we are used to speak more than needed. What is it? There is one thing, cosmogenesis, the emergence of the world. And there is another thing, phonogenesis, the emergence of the phonemes by means of which we have the rise of the world. We have to read from both the Vedic and Tantric perspective. What is consistent is phonogenesis and cosmogenesis are correlated, meaning the emanation of the sound and the emanation of the cosmos coincide. And that the rishis understood as an emanation of consciousness into pulsation, prana. That is the mechanisms by means of which consciousness pulsates, meaning embodiment, meaning coming to life. Coming to life, having speech, and coming to embodiment or materiality are parallel, are simultaneous. That is why recognizing the mantric order implies recognizing the cosmic order. Recognizing the cosmic order implies recognizing the life as such. And recognizing the life as such is the teleology of living itself, meaning what is the point of living? Why are we alive? I mean, animals don't need to do philosophy. What a beautiful life they have. They don't need to wake up in the morning and just see why is this sun rising every day. The humans also do not need to do that. If you do not do that, then you will have a very happy life, like deers and elephants and monkeys. Like they're living in this perfect joy, never questioning anything. Things are happening. You have a choice to live a very happy life or live a human life. The human life is embedded, I not just embedded, ridden with questions, with riddles. That is why the rishi start saying Chatwari Shringa, four horns bull. I mean, why do you have to think of a bull and having four horns? Because you can imagine. That is what makes one a rishi, goes beyond what is a pure description. Even elephants can see a bull with two horns, but I doubted they see the bull with four. Is it the job of seeing what is not there? The task of speech, and now you see what I'm talking about, the task of speech goes beyond pure reference, pure description. The task of speech expands to consciousness. And if you think of consciousness as your entire mansion and then one single apartment kitchen as the manifest reality, physical world. If you think of your consciousness as the totality of the sky and your body is merely shrunken in a tiny space and time, the only way to become immeasurable while living in the measured is by recognizing the mantras the way they are. What is mantra then? The support for mantra is matrika, the phonemes. Matrika also means the mothers. But translation wise, matrika is better translated as the matrices, the matrix that measures. What measures? Speech measures. When you say, I'm sad, I measure your psychological state. When you say, I'm hungry, I measure your physical state. And so on and so forth. Language helps us measure reality. But there is another thing beyond the measuring, the immeasurable. And that is also given in speech, in thought, and that is where mantra comes. The task of mantra is to pluck you from this measured world and lift you to the immeasurable. Your journey high up into the absolute becomes possible not by simply the measured words, but by the words they create, they constitute reality. What do I mean? Now there are two types of, if I say speech, what? One is the what that describes, another is the what that creates. Sometimes when you say, I love you, it describes your mental state. You love her or him. Sometimes when you say, I love you, you are trying to create a reality that the other subject also loves you. When we are thinking about language, mostly in the paradigm of the Western world, we are only thinking of this descriptive role of language, not the creative role of language. Language creates. By means of speech, we create new reality. And that is where our mind, manas and mantra, man, again, then you can see the same verbal root for the mind, meditation, mantra are coming together. Man, manan, to reflect, to think, and tra, to protect, to trana. What happens with mantra, when you reflect and reflect and reflect, that the entire reality becomes encapsulated within it. And the more you infuse your life, your consciousness, your thoughts into mantra, the more you rise above fear. What is fear? The root of fear is duality and death. Death is a concept based on duality, because death always demands life. It's a dichotomy. And the duality fragments, subject, object, duality fragments. And in the singular sphere, when the mind and the cosmos are not divided, when you split into half, if you have split your property into 4 pieces, 5 pieces to share among your brothers, then you will know it's not fun. So that is why when there is the singularity and there is no suffering, when there is duality, the dichotomies and splitting, and there is the suffering. When there is a speech and reference, there is suffering. When the speech returns back to its own primordial state, there is no suffering. Abhayam Brahma, there is no fear. What is left then? Just Brahman. So in the Vedanta, we say Tattvamasi, we do not say the mantra, we say Mahavakya, the sentences, you see. And later, when the Tantras reflect on the same Mahavakya, then they use that as the mantra. Meaning they deviated from the early Vedic understanding of sense reference, and they thought that we need to think beyond Vakya, the sentences, because they are always resting on the dichotomy of sense and reference. We need to go to this constitutive role that aham brahmasmi, I am the Brahman, and then this very notion is to constitute the absolute nature within me, not just describing what is it there, but to create that state of the mind within me. And then it becomes the mantra. Rather than looking for a meaning of mantra in the dichotomous terms. Therefore, it is meaningful to sit and just do it. It's a little interesting thing I'm saying, because all I do is philosophy, and then when some friends and some students become close, and I whisper them some phonemes and say repeat it, and then because I do not like the people who are not doing a lot of philosophy and intellectual gymnastics, and then they are already selected, and then they are destined to ask questions non-stop. And I tell them, this is not the time to question. This is the time to do it. And they don't get it. But you always tell us to ask questions. I'm not suspending questions, but this is things to do, and there are other things to ask questions about. But then they get very confused. And I have just one example. I don't do recipe books. My mother never did recipe book. My wife never did recipe book, but people do recipe book. That's called Bible, or whatever book, book is the book. And you follow the book and you cook and you eat. When you are eating what you have cooked, stop asking questions. Enjoy the food. There is time to think of the recipes. Maybe we should do little extra salt. Maybe soy sauce is better for this dish, and so on. But there is another time to be able to savor. And what is missing in life is experience. For most of the intellectual folks, including myself, what is happening is intellectualism has rooted like cancer, a disease. And we try to brainstorm everything, and we think that if we have conceptualized and categorized, named it, we are under control. That is how we started naming things. The things we could name in the ancient times, when they thought they could name things, they thought they could control those things. And you know that most of the cultures believe that to know the name of somebody, then you can put the spell, you can control them. So the idea of naming, determination. I have determined what it is, meaning now under my grip. And as long as you are trying to keep the absolute under your grip, you are not willing to reside in that absolute reality. Your ego has come to suspend your progress to recognizing reality. All the books, all the studies, and the moment of understanding came, and our ego blocked us from seeing that. And what happens? It is like the description of the sunrise. You know, if you are living in that Plato's cave and reading poetries about sunrise, you have learned so much about the sunrise, but have never seen the sunrise. So mantra is actually also a mechanism to suspend this meditation process. But why are we repeating this? Million times, give me a break. Okay, why you are repeating? And then this counting is just to help you to get really tired of your mind. And what happens in the process is you get, if you are really doing it, you recognize number one, a gradual progression to the subtle realms of speech, meaning rather than speaking out, you tap into your thoughts. Sometimes you start seeing your thoughts before they arise in your head, and that is how you tell your mind, I am not going to think this. Most people don't even think of the thoughts, they blurt out. And only then they realize they were thinking like this. So other people have gone to the thought level, they can see thoughts. But then the mantra sadhana can allow you to go to the origins of thought, the ground where thoughts emerge. And you are sitting in that ground where thoughts pulsate. But you are not sitting just in the ground where thoughts pulsate. This is where Vedanta can help us. That you are watching the genesis of thought. And you realize that you are transcendent to the process of thought. And this is big. And then when it becomes a thought, oh, I am the one watching my thought, and it becomes a thought itself. And you have to always transcend this also, because it is also thought now. And in this gradual transcendence, you recognize the dichotomy between the observer and the observed collapses. You enter into the non-dual state. The mantra becomes the process. Now, forget about all the philosophies you have learned. This becomes the vehicle for you to reach there, to transcend the mental state, to transcend the ego, to recognize reality. And then the speech, you see that this speech as such divided into the four horns: the external speech, the intermediate speech, the subtle speech, and the foundation, that is also called speech. And that is where you become a rishi. Rishi is not some old dude, 5,000-year-old. Rishi is not a political status like some sociologists have imposed. Rishi is something you can be. Rishi is something you can experience. When you sit quietly and you see your thoughts, you repeat mantras, and instead of hearing, you see the mantras, you start seeing thoughts bubbling up. You become the seer of the speech arising from your heart. You have situated yourself, your ego, in the ground of Pashyanti Vach, the speech that sees itself, and you become Rishi. Rishi is a scientific mechanism. And this mechanism is to transcend the dichotomy. When the speech and the expressed becomes one and merge in the perceiver, the subject, and that also dissolves. There is nothing to perceive there, therefore there is no perceiver. And then some thought, then there is nothing. No, we didn't mean that. What is that? There is everything and nothing too. Nothing also is there within everything. The mechanisms of recognizing speech is the mechanism of mantra sadhana. The primacy of mantra sadhana, again, is maun. Again, it comes from number one, the same root of mon, mentation, and muni for the sage, a rishi. So why is silence so central? I have met some sadhakas, the practitioners, who have maintained a total silence for 12 years, 14 years of their life. We cannot afford that. I cannot afford that because my job is to talk, or I can't feed myself. But most of us, all of us, if I had a mechanism to eat without talking, I would still not be able to do it. I have tried once a week, 1 day a week, silence many years ago. And even that is torturous enough. You want to fast, it's not as difficult as maintaining silence. Because when you do not eat, you have a different sense of craving. When you do not talk, meaning no chatting, nothing, that's a very different craving. The urge to ooze out, like if you have a big wound and the pus is filling and it's just like release is needed. Not that we are going to resonate some mantras and heal the world, but the broken wound, we are all wounded beings, and oozing outwards gives us a sensory pleasure of satisfaction for a short time. And therefore, we abuse speech. It's not the use of speech, it is the abuse of speech that we think we are speaking. We are not speaking. We are in this soliloquy, and that is for self recovery. We think like drugs, speech has become like drugs. So my point is to reflect back, to refine the mantras. We need, the first thing is mona, silence, and introspection emerges from within, and mantras start arising, mantras come to life. How do we know mantras coming to life? When your mind cannot think of anything but what you are repeating, everything you do, the same speech repeats itself, then you know the mantras have origin within you. But that is not the end point, though, because then there can come a conflict. You are playing with the mind and the fire. That is like if you let it go, you may lose your mind, you may lose your control. If you don't have the courage to go that far, you are not going to see the mantras for what they can do. It's like you read about fire, but you don't have the courage to rub the rocks and ignite the fire. But now the fire has been ignited. You have to contain it. You can't just let it engulf the whole house. So mantras arise, and then you have to maintain the mechanism of your observer. And these mantras become the proper instruments, as if your organs. Saharadhaka chittena tena te shiva dharmina. So they pluck you up from the bottom of the lake and lift you up like the petals of lotus, helping you rise from the darkness of the depth of the lake to the rise of the sun up. The job is the mantra, because there is something in between the visible and the invisible. There is something between the absolute, the Brahman, and this manifest world. Just because you have given up the entire manifestation, you do not automatically realize yourself in your absolute form. You can go to this absolute nothingness, the void. Some people do enter into the abysmal void. And how not to go into that void? When your mind is not working, you can guide yourself to higher and higher and higher planes of reality as long as you have your mind helping you. But when you enter into the asampragyata samadhi, in the samadhi state at the highest absorption, when there is nothing to be cognized, what helps you go further in absolute Shiva state? You need a mechanism. That is what works for you when you are not there. It is like when you are asleep, somebody takes care of you, like the mother. It is like the boat that when you cannot swim anymore, that you can rest on, and that carries you to the further shores. And what is that? That is the mantra. So the practice of the mantra is not just about simple repetition. It demands shraddha, and it demands niyama, discipline. It demands routine. It demands our habits to be corrected. I have some students who ask me, I really am not in position to give up drugs, but I am doing the mantras. Oh my gosh, good for you, but don't bug me. I cannot give my time because it's these things are not there to work for you when our basic livelihood, embodiment, our proper mental state are to be questioned, are in perils. There is something called having a proper physical, mental health, and something else beyond this simple health, that is the swastha, to situate within oneself, to heal. And what is the real healing? It is the disease of bondage, it is the disease of duality, and the real healing is the recognition of this non-dual state of oneself in the mantric field. So I do not want to keep on talking in this because these are not the conversations that we can end. I would rather like to address your questions if you have any for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Timalsina. So, as Dr. Timalsina says, at this point, although maybe you guys want to keep chanting your mantra because that in effect is that's what's going to transform us, and questions may be meaningless at an ultimate point, but for right now, if there are any questions, what I'd like you to do is just if you want to go to in the reactions, just raise your hand and calling you. Otherwise, you can put a question into the chat box as well, okay? All right, let us go ahead and begin. All right, Ravi, go ahead and unmute yourself. We can't hear you, Ravi.
No, not yet.
We can't hear you.
Now?
Yes, now, yes.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I was in Bharavach, not Vaikari. My question is, Acharyaji, a lot of people say that, oh, your speech creates reality. You have these people, and maybe they're, in California, who say, oh, if you say something into universe, then it becomes true. In academia, you have people like who study social construction, who say, well, it's all our language that shapes reality. But what you talk about seems to be less about our speech creating reality as much as sort of discovering it, like a rita, like there is an order. The order is rooted in some form of transcendent speech. And when we chant mantra, we reconnect with it. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about where maybe the people who emphasize our individual speech creates our reality, whether that's incorrect or too limited, and whether the rishis really create through their speech or whether they just sort of connect with an existing order, or are they really creating a new order with their speech?
Both us and the postmodern thinkers agree, Ravi, that speech creates reality. And the only difference we have is for the postmodern thinkers, there really is no reality. There is no absolute reality as such other than fabrication, social fabrication, mental fabrication. And for us, there actually is the reality. But then is it created? Because then if I am the one creating that, how could this be reality in the universal intersubjective field? There is one mechanism of uncovering. I'm using creation in the sense of uncovering, and another is projecting. The postmodern thinkers are talking about projecting reality. If you have power, you project your reality. If you keep telling that again and again, then it shall be real, true for everybody else. And the boot and the guns create that type of reality also. What the rishis are talking about is more of a deconstructive mechanism in the sense that the speech itself is a mechanism to wipe clean of these processes that has projected falsehood and given us a life of unreality. Speech does not just, it's a two-edged sword. It cuts through the same reality that it creates. And only by means of speech that we can transcend speech and what it has created. For us, there is a foundation to go beyond the projection. For them, there is nothing, abyss, a chaos. Because what is abyss? How can we guide the entire society towards the abyss? How can we create a social philosophy towards absolute nothingness to rely on, to reside on, to just propagate falsehood by industrialization of speech, by means of the media, by means of academia, and by means of a corporatization of the educational institutions, projecting a reality that supports the controllers behind the puppet show. That's not real, Rabi. These thinkers who are calling upon the power of speech for creating reality are really not even endorsing any absoluteness of reality, but only its phenomenality. And therefore, the mantric construction can help both ways, as a creation, but also as a cure from the creation. Because what we need today is the type of education for the humanity where we can cure from the disease of human projection. Because we are only projecting one after another reality to manipulate the human mass psyche, not just engineering on individual agency, but engineering the collective agency. And this is where the mantra consciousness can help to allow to go beyond these projections. I'm going to stop there so other people can ask too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. Just before we get to the next physical question, there's a question that came in by Matthias. His question is the breath, prana, the link between the mental and physical worlds and speech? Why is it important to connect the mantra with the breath?
If there is no prana, then the body is dead. But if the prana is proper, if the prana is subtle, it starts affecting the mental. Prana, therefore, is the nexus of the mind and the body. Meaning, when you breathe properly, you start having organized thoughts. Meaning, breath is a physical thing. Oxygen is physically observable entity, measurable entity. You can measure oxygen in your blood also. You can measure oxygen. And then the mind, the changing in the mental state, you cannot measure, but you can feel. But the effect of prana, you can see it touching. The prana is touching the both realms. Just like the ancient ones said that there is a cord connecting the heaven and earth. Prana, the same way, is the connecting thread between the body and the mind. Therefore, without allowing the prana to become subtle, if we just repeat mantras, we are not balancing our mind, and the pranic imbalance can cause disease, number one. But at the same time, because there is no pranic balance, the mantra repetition will be infused with unwholesome thoughts and will be uncontrollable. Therefore, pranic purification is a precondition for mantra sadhana. Therefore, before you start doing mantras, do a couple breaths of pranayama. This will help you understand how prana and mantra mind are connected.
And can you suggest when you say a couple of breaths of pranayama, do you mean just regulated breathing? What are you suggesting when you say a couple of breaths of pranayama?
I meant Surya and Chandra Vedana type pranayama. Generally, that's how traditionally we describe. Breathe in from one nostril, hold it till you are 75% comfortable. Breathe out the same way, hold. That is one count. Do from other side, and then reverse the order 3 times. Generally, we prescribe for any general practice of mantra practice.
Thank you. Wonderful. All right. Drew, can you also just unmute you and just where are you zooming in from also?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm in San Diego right now. Thank you, Doctor, for your discourse and also your content on the Vimarsha Foundation website. I've taken some courses there. My question is, how do I select a mantra?
You do not select a mantra. Mantra selects you, or basically that's the role of a guru. That is why Nowadays, people are, I found this mantra, that mantra, oh, Google has so much. That's just a really bizarre thing. So that's always you need a mentor. And mantras generally would come to you, but the mantra that comes to you, it will take time. The mantra will need to be given by a practitioner who has himself lived mantra. And then slowly, when you bring that mantra to life, then slowly you would start connection to mantras, and then you can later on um, see the mantras or what suits you, but not that you start your sadhana by finding a mantra of your choice. It's not, that's not how it works. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Okay, Jeffrey, go ahead and unmute yourself and just maybe let us know where you're zooming from.
San Diego. Hello, Sthaneshwar ji. I have a question very closely related to Drew's question, the previous question. Each of us, as I understand it, is a unique manifestation of the unmanifest of Brahman. How is our mantra related to our particular individuation? How does the mantra express our particular manifestation?
In Jeff, in two different levels. One, in the process of cosmogenesis, we are subjected to this sonic resonance or karmic residue or individual and the collective processes of karmic unfolding, and that whole thing boils down to the soup of sound, resonance, and spanda, vibration, pulsation, and that pulsation gives to this pulsation spanda of our heartbeat of life, and we come to life, we become an embodied being. That's one. But another is the rise of the higher awareness of singularity. And this rise of the higher awareness of singularity becomes possible when the mind is attuned to mantra, and then the resonance takes over my own proprioception, my own consciousness of my body, when mantra awareness becomes my physical awareness, meaning when the subject experiences herself as the mantra. And that is when subject transforms, subjective transformation happens. We can uplift ourselves at that moment. We can rise above our individuation at that moment. And that is the task for the mantra jap. And this can happen by our repeated surrendering, shraddha. Because for learning, we may not need shraddha as much. But for understanding and for our own transformation, we need shraddha. That's in the Buddhist text, that's why we first stress on bodhicitta utpada, bodhicitta bhavana, the generation of the body mind, because as long as there is no cultivation of shraddha, there is no cultivation of virtue and compassion, and then you are doing all these mantras go astray, and in a dangerous place also, because um, traditionally speaking, mantra practice can generate some powers that may happen, siddhis, and then if the person is not responsible, and how one can be responsible is by having immeasurable compassion, shraddha, faith in the guru and the system, and then he cannot be destructive person. Otherwise, the energy that can be generated can be used for negative goals. So therefore, Vedanta, I would say, first study Vedanta. No, generally, people coming to study Tantra Shastra, I say, can you start from Sankhya philosophy? And then they get so fed up, run away. And I get so relieved because they're not qualified enough to do mantra practices because they have all the misunderstandings. First, open the horizon of the mind. Do not try to capture truth within your horizon. Give up your horizon to surrender to the truth. The problem of the world is trying to capture the truth and encapsulate it within our own pre-conditioned mental state. We are not willing to let go of our determined modes of mental state. We think the reality has to be captured within what we want the reality to be. So, if the truth itself manifests to us that is not what we thought it is ought to be, we tell the truth to go away. So that is why the precondition for mantra practice is the opening of the horizon and these surrendering Shraddha, and therefore these are connected like a past previous question of Drew also, that cultivation of Shraddha. These are not like learning something unique in the process of picking up a few mantra speech here and there, but rather the transformation. That is what is the precondition for practice, sadhana. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to a question in our chat box. This is from Nalini. It says that you stated that Brahman can be achieved by non-duality, but can it be reached by recognizing duality? Does not the non-dual seeker also recognize duality?
Without recognizing duality, there is no recognition of non-duality. If somebody is denying duality and aspiring for non-duality, one is trying to fly an aeroplane without what you call the airport, where you land the plane.
The runway?
Yeah, the plane is supposed to be up in the air. And you see, but why would I ever want to touch the ground? That is low life people sitting down, and you are lost. Because the purpose of the soaring high is to realize reality, but that is possible only when you have the ground, the foundation. Dve satye samupashritya buddhanam dharma deshana ekam samvriti satyam cha aparam paramarthikam. Nagarjuna said that the wise ones have instructed dharma by residing on two truths. One is the limited truth and the another is the absolute truth. What is that? Is we have to recognize our body, we have to recognize our social life, and then while residing in this, not denying these basic foundational things, that we say that this is true only in the relative realm, and in absolute realm, this is not absolutely real. So therefore, yes, for those who are residing in non-duality and simply denying duality, they are not really conducting dharma, because the body, the life, the society, our conventions, social constitutions, power, money, all these things, not absolutely real, but they reside on duality, and you have to recognize their conventional reality. And when you are recognizing their conventional reality and embracing their conventional reality, that you can soar up and making the progress. It's like a base camp and the top of the Mount Everest. You know, you have a base camp, you camp there and then rise up. If you just don't believe in the conventions of what is the base camp, there is no, just the mountain top, there's no climbing, there's no progress happening. You can be airdropped, you know, from like, maybe that is possible. I don't know if they do it, but they should start, you know, just airdropping on top of Mount Everest and done. You are already up there. It's like anybody else. But that is not called climbing, okay? I'm metaphorically talking about spiritual progress, like climbing the peak of the mountain. If you are airdropped, then you didn't do any climbing. The same way, if you accidentally go to some experiences without recognizing the groundwork, you can't sustain it. And that is the problem of many people who have a sudden source of experiences and it vanishes. And it is also the problem of people experiencing some non-dual state by doing a DMT or ayahuasca or something or the other, because they don't have the mechanism to retain it. Only the people who have recognized duality, the foundation, the body, and then recognize non-duality, they can retain the absolute experience. Thank you so much.
Dr. Timalsina, just the one thing to add, just because you brought this up. Sometimes we hear people asking, well, should I take some type of drug-inducing state to open up that sense of reality? So then I have that shraddha, I have that faith or experience, and then I start doing this practice. Do you suggest that? Let me ask you.
I have had many friends who have these amazing experiences by doing drugs. Number one, I have never seen them having those experiences outside of the drug-induced state. For 20 years, 30 years, they have done these things. Some people do more often because they like it, and then that's a different issue. But even those who do once a year and get that experiences, it becomes like, even with sugar, you know, if you are used to enjoying food without sugar, food as such is not horrible. You will start tasting food, but start adding 2-3 spoons of sugar like we do in India, you know, and then you can't taste without sugar. And even jalebi will be blend for you. That is like doing drugs too.
Thank you.
It is added sugar
Yeah.
that suspends your ability to process subtle states and to go there.
Right.
It creates euphoric moment for a short time, and what you experience is not a lie; it's a real experience. But what is the point of it? We have created human society in the 20th century obsessed with the experience, but not with transformation. We have told that if you experience the singularity, everything will fall in place. No, it does not. Even with Brahma experiences, you know, like not just with drug induced, sudden rise of Kundalini experience, nothing happens.
Hmm.
You know, you cannot just say job done by having experience, because the ultimate thing is about total transformation. Experiences can help you transform if they are naturally occurring. Experiences induced in such states have very little chance of actually transforming yourself. It's better in dream experiences where, rather than drug-induced state, if you are having some transformative experiences in your dream, you have more likely chance of actually transforming your horizon. I have myself felt, whatever I say, I've done ganja, not higher drugs, but I have had many transformative experiences in dreams. And I can say, even based on my limited experience, that any type of induced state will not take you any further. Okay.
Yeah, I can even see that it would make you more impatient as well. If you're doing your sadhana, to expect something to happen, and you may not then have the ability to sustain the sadhana. So, yes, thank you so much with that. Um, let's go to the next question. Vishal, where are you zooming from?
Thank you, Swamiji. My name is Bishal. I'm, as you say, zooming in from Norwegian soil. I'm working in Norwegian University of Life Sciences here in Norway. Thank you, Professor, for very, very insightful this presentation. There are quite a few now yoga universities and other research organizations where they are publishing work on therapeutic applications of mantra, and they use some kind of mechanism how mantra activates the vagus nerve, and that will have a beneficial effect. What is your take on the therapeutic application of mantra? That's my first question. The other question is that as far as my roots from South Asia goes, there are also mantras that do not need vocalization. Could you also say something about those? Thank you.
Of course, mantras, when we say about transforming power, we took it, understood their transformative power for healing. How do they work is still a mystery. There are some sets of mantras that are simply designated for healing. How do they heal the subjects? I myself do not know. They do have tremendous effect. I'm not a neuroscientist, but someone who has practiced these things, I can say from the perspective of a practitioner that they have tremendous transformative power, including healing, particularly mental healing and also to some extent physical healing. But the resonance, and now they are talking about even the procedures, operation like sonic vibration, processing, doing the surgery with the sound waves. And so they are taking into the next realm of the observable world. That's what the physical sciences do. I'm not rejecting that. We have to work together to understand and unravel the mysteries of the world. And that includes the mysteries of the speech, the power of the sound. But there is no denying that the speech has healing capacity. And then, yes, not all mantras ought to be vocalized. Actually, that is why we call mantra gopya, not because you have to hide it from everybody, but we are not supposed to vocalize the mantra, chant everywhere. When people think that they are bringing mantra to prominence by turning them into some kind of bhajan, they are actually misappropriating and destroying the culture. And actually, the people who love the most could be the people who harm the most, So like, for example, if you go to village and the villager's mother gets a seizure, and then the villager, does some chicken witchcraft or something, and his intention is good, but he ends up killing her. So some of these things that are originally speaking counterculture, but they are bringing this to popularize things, so-called, are not actually conducive for conserving the spirit of the mantra tradition. So mantra tradition itself needs proper conservation. In today's world, I even do not have a proper map of how that is to be done, because the old structures do not really function anymore. The strict family-based teaching systems do not work, for example. But how to conserve these things without completely disrupting the fabric of mantric structure is a challenge for all of us who believe that there is something really meaningful in these teachings and the practices. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to our final question of the day. So, Sylvain, can you unmute yourself, and where are you zooming from?
Yes, Pranama Acharya-ji. I'm sorry, I might be oversimplifying, but can we say that to see is ultimately to stop naming, to take ownership of pseudo-reality by actively creating the ultimate reality?
Sylvian, you put it very well. When we continue to name reality, we have the vritti. Vritti means a mental modification. We are trying to box or capture reality within the designated framework. And when the framework is our own projection, that reality will come within that too, but will not be all. You go with a pitcher, with a jug, fill water from the ocean, you are close to the Pacific maybe, and bring that water to someone who has never seen the ocean and say, this is the water from the Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean is a lot of water, just this water. There is nothing more than water, and exactly the same quality water. That's what Pacific Ocean is. You have given a thought to a poor person with your jug and salty water. He is not able to fathom the ocean by your jug full of water. The sky, when a child doesn't know what is the sky, and then you clap and look, it is the empty sky. I'm clapping my hands. And he understands that empty sky within that conceptual horizon. He's not getting the sky. So conceptualization is imminent. Without conceptualization, we fail to move towards the absolute. But conceptualization is itself a curse, is itself a bondage. It is itself a problem that needs to be overcome. We need to go beyond conceptualization, beyond naming. And what is there? Being only. And mantras have to therefore touch both the horizons of the conceptualized and the non-conceptualizable. And therefore, it cannot have the fixed, limited meaning. It has to start from something meaning, some meaningful thing, and then go beyond the realm of the meaning and reference and all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Timalsina, and thank you, everyone, for this very engaging and deep conversation on mantra. Dr. Timalsina, I see that we had a good number of people here, And I think this is a very popular subject. So what I'm suggesting maybe is we continue this subject maybe in the month of May and do a mantra part 2, because there are topics that were discussed. I think maybe mantra Chaitanya, the 4 stages of the mantra you had briefly mentioned, and also maybe going into a little bit more about mantra practices. If given a mantra, what are the ways that we can actually more, how can we deepen our, what are ways we can deepen our practices? So I think maybe, would that be okay with you, Dr. Timalsina?
Swamiji, I'm always at your service.
Wonderful. Then I think maybe if possible, I'll talk to Dr. Timalsina later. We can maybe arrange a mantra part 2 and more about the practices and a deepening of the experiences. So I want to thank every one of you so much for coming. Our Dr. Timalsina ji, who's, as you see, is such depth, such knowledge, because he's also a sadhaka, he himself practices. So we're just so fortunate that although he's left San Diego, he's still with us in this realm. So thank you, everyone. And Dr. Timalsina, would you like to close off with a chant?
Nira samsat purna dahamiti pura bhasayati yate dvishakha mashaste tadanucha vibhanktum nijakalam swarupa dunmesha prasarana nimesha sthiti jushas tadadvaitam vande Paramashiva Shaktya Nikhilam. Om. Thank you so much. Namaskar, everybody.
Namaste, everyone. Just one last thing. Next week, we have the lecture by Swami Medhananda talking about the journey of faith. Next week, and it's 1 week from today. Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you, Dr. Timalsina. Jai Ma.